Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
Before we begin, let me know where you're tuning in from down in the comments. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next tale. A thin sliver of moonlight slipped through the bedroom curtains, illuminating the corner of the room where Dennis sat bolt upright. His heart thumped a restless beat against his ribcage, and a sticky warmth clung to his skin. He couldn't tell if it was due to the late summer heat or the knot tightening in his stomach. He glanced over at the digital clock on the nightstand. 1:14 a.m. For a moment, the house seemed perfectly silent until he heard a hushed voice. Someone was talking in the hallway, voice lowered to a whisper. Dennis slid out of bed, careful not to rustle the sheets too loudly. The bedroom floor felt cold beneath his feet as he walked toward the door. He paused, every muscle tense. That was Maria's voice. "Is everything okay?" he heard her say, voice trembling. I'm not sure. Tomorrow might be better. I can't talk right now." Dennis's pulse kicked harder. He inched the door open, his breath caught in his throat. Through the faint glow of the hallway lamp, he saw Maria standing with her back to him, holding her phone tightly to her ear. She wore an old t-shirt that hung loosely over her frame, but her posture was rigid, like she was bracing for bad news or trying to hide something. All at once, she ended the call with a quick tap on the screen. Sensing someone behind her, Maria spun around, eyes wide. "Dennis!" she blurted out, nearly dropping the phone. "You scared me!" Dennis forced a small laugh. "I'm sorry. Couldn't sleep, thought I heard something." Maria's face was flushed, and she quickly locked her phone, pressing it against her side. For a split second, Dennis noticed the tension in her hands. Something about the way she cradled that phone screamed secret. It was a friend," she said hastily. "An old friend from volunteer work at the hospital. They're having issues. I was giving them advice." "Everything okay?" Dennis tried to keep his voice calm, but a certain edge crept in despite himself. She nodded, maybe too fast. Yeah, no big deal." She reached for his hand. "Come on, let's get back to bed." He followed her to their bedroom, though the heaviness in his chest didn't ease. In the muted light, her eyes darted everywhere but his. Dennis wanted to ask more, but the worry in her gaze kept him silent. He was afraid a single-pointed question might shatter the fragile peace they still had. Morning came in with a golden glow that spilled across the blinds, and Dennis woke to the smell of coffee drifting under the door. Downstairs, he found Maria in the kitchen, dressed in jeans and a casual blouse, busy wiping the countertops. "Morning," he said, clearing his throat, still recalling the suspicious hush of last night. "Hey," she answered with a soft smile. "I brewed your favorite roast." He forced a smile in return. The swirl of questions and doubts hammered away inside his mind. Still, he tried to act normal for now. He sipped his coffee, nodding at Maria's remarks about her schedule, a hospital volunteer shift at midday, then grocery shopping. Their home felt slightly empty. Ethan, their eldest son, was off at college, while Lily and Colin, the younger siblings, were visiting a relative for the weekend. For the moment, it was just him and Maria in the house, but somehow it felt like they were miles apart. After breakfast, Dennis stepped outside to check the mail. The day was already hot, the sun glaring at the suburban street. As he flipped through a handful of bills and coupons, his phone vibrated. "Hey, man," came Paul's boisterous voice on the other end. "We're still on for that fishing trip next Saturday, right? Colin and Mark are in, too. You free?" Dennis rubbed the back of his neck. "I guess I could use the break, yeah." "You sound weird. Everything good?" Paul asked, concern creeping into his tone. Dennis hesitated, staring at the lines in the concrete driveway. "It's probably nothing. I'm just a little stressed. I'll fill you in when we head out." Paul didn't push. "All right. We'll swing by to pick you up Saturday morning. Bring the gear, and we'll set up camp by the river. Perfect place to talk, or, not talk at all." "Sounds good," Dennis replied quietly. He slipped his phone back into his pocket. An old friend or not, the phone call last night still gnawed at him. Something in Maria's eyes had spooked him. the tension in her voice that wasn't how she usually sounded, and that unnerved him more than the actual words. Little did he know that moment that subtle feeling of dread would soon spiral into a test of trust he never imagined facing. That afternoon, Maria left for the hospital, and the house went silent again. Dennis walked through the rooms in a restless shuffle, glancing now and then at the clock. Each second that passed brought a fresh wave of anxiety. His eyes landed on Maria's empty coffee mug at the table. He picked it up, noticed traces of lipstick at the rim, then carefully set it in the sink. He stared out the window, sunlight glaring off the hood of Maria's vacant sedan. A single phrase echoed in his mind. What if something's really wrong? Nightfall found Dennis lying in bed yet again, but the hush of midnight was even heavier. Though no calls awoke him this time, he felt a storm churning. He had no idea the first lightning strike had already happened, and soon enough, it would flash brighter than he could handle. By morning, he would be packing his fishing rod for the upcoming trip, clueless that what he'd discover on that trip would change everything he believed about his marriage. Dennis watched the winding road unfold before him as Paul's SUV sped along the highway toward the lake. The early Saturday sun made the asphalt shimmer, and a warm breeze blew through the open windows. In the back seat, Colin rummaged through a cooler while Mark hummed along to a rock tune on the radio. "Dude, you're quieter than usual," Mark said, twisting around in the passenger seat to glance at Dennis. "Something on your mind?" Dennis rubbed his eyes. He'd hardly slept. "Just, work stuff, family stuff." Paul flicked on his turn signal. "Family stuff, huh? You and Maria doing all right?" He kept his voice casual, but the concern was obvious. Dennis hesitated. Usually he prided himself on being a private guy. Yet the tension that had been building since Maria's mysterious phone call was pushing him to confide in someone. "I don't know," he admitted, voice low. "She's been acting off lately like she's hiding something. I can't put my finger on it." Silence filled the car, punctuated only by the rumble of the engine. Then Colin cleared his throat. "I, might have something to tell you." He turned from rummaging in the cooler, water bottle in hand. "Might be nothing, but I saw Maria last week. At the Marriott Hotel downtown." "What?" Dennis's gut tightened. "Are you sure it was her?" Colin nodded uneasily. "I was delivering some supplies there for a client. I spotted her in the parking lot walking out of the lobby. She didn't see me, and I didn't think much of it at the time. But maybe that's the weird behavior you're picking up on." The SUV's hum grew louder in Dennis's ears. Maria at the Marriott? That made no sense. She'd never mentioned volunteering anywhere near that hotel. Why hide it? Paul's eyebrows shot up in the rearview mirror. "Well, a hotel is not exactly your typical volunteer spot, right?" Dennis tried to steady his breathing. "She told me she was out running errands that day." He paused, swallowing the dryness in his throat. "Maybe she had a reason to be there, but it doesn't add up." Mark broke the silence, voice gentle. "Look, man, I'm sure there's an explanation. Maybe she was visiting a friend who was staying there or picking something up." Dennis forced himself to nod, though a ball of dread settled in his stomach. He recalled the phone call, the whispering, the anxious expression, now the hotel. Maybe it was all innocent, maybe not. Eventually, the SUV pulled off the main road and onto a gravel path leading to the lakefront. Pines and oaks lined the water's edge, their reflections shimmering under the mid-morning sun. Even the crisp smell of pine needles couldn't wash away the tension swirling in Dennis's head. They spent the first hour unloading gear, setting up rods, and picking spots along the bank. The usual banter was subdued. Colin threw occasional glances Dennis's way, probably regretting his revelation, but knowing it had to be said. When their fishing lines were finally cast into the still water, Mark popped open a soda and offered one to Dennis. "You know," he said, "my cousin used to volunteer with a local group that had events at hotels, conferences, seminars, that kind of thing." Dennis exhaled slowly. "Yeah, maybe that's it." But inside, he wasn't convinced. Maria would have told him if she was attending any event, especially a regular one. "Right?" Paul let out a sigh. "Dennis, if it's bugging you, talk to her. Be honest about what you're worried about. Secrets can eat away at a marriage." Dennis nodded. though the gnawing sense of betrayal continued. He stared at the water, the bobber floating serenely on the surface. "I will," he said. "I just need more clarity." They fell into silence, the distant call of birds echoing across the lake. A peaceful scene on the outside, but in Dennis's mind, the seeds of doubt had already sprouted. Paula leaned back in her office chair, massaging the tension in her temples. A half-empty cup of cold coffee sat on her desk next to a stack of real estate listings. Outside, the city bustled with midday activity car horns, sidewalk chatter, but inside her mind, the world felt stuck on one glaring problem: Daniel. He'd been coming home later than usual for weeks, always offering some excuse. Late client meeting, urgent business dinner, traffic was a nightmare. But Paula knew her husband's rhythms. He never used to miss family dinners so casually. And now, the hush-hush phone calls, abrupt texting in the middle of the night, it all smelled wrong. Her phone buzzed, jolting her out of her thoughts. She glanced at the caller ID. "Layla, bank admin." Perfect timing. Paula snatched the phone up. "Layla," she said softly. "Thanks for calling back. Any luck with those account statements we talked about?" Layla's voice came through with a swirl of background noise. "Yeah, I pulled a few statements for Daniel's credit card. You were right, he's had multiple charges at the Marriott downtown for the past couple of months." Paula's chest tightened. "Marriott on which dates?" Layla listed off several recent afternoons. Paula's blood ran cold. That was the same time frame Daniel claimed to be at the office or caught in traffic. She couldn't help the quiver in her voice. "Okay, Layla, thanks. This helps clear up some confusion." After hanging up, Paula pressed her forehead to her palm. Why a hotel? Was he meeting someone there or attending a conference? Daniel worked in insurance. Sure, he might have corporate visits, but so many charges at once? Moments later, her phone lit up with a text from Daniel. "We'll be home late. Don't wait up. Love you." She stared at the words, so short and distant. The phrase "love you" felt hollow typed out that way, as if an afterthought. She recalled the other day, rummaging through the trash for a receipt and stumbling upon a scribbled note that said, "Room 212, 2 p.m. She'd brushed it off as an office detail. Now the puzzle pieces were aligning in a way she dreaded. Resolving to stay composed, Paula tossed the cold coffee and grabbed her purse. She had a property showing in half an hour. It was one of those fixer-uppers near the old downtown district, and she needed her professional face on. Clients wouldn't care about her personal turmoil. Out on the street, the sun blazed overhead as she walked to her car. A swirl of afternoon heat radiated off the pavement. She inhaled the city's bustle exhaust fumes, food truck aromas, overheard snatches of conversation, and let it distract her momentarily. But the moment she slid behind the wheel, the weight returned. Daniel's hiding something. She tried to recall the early days of their marriage. Daniel had been sweet, attentive, a good listener. They'd talk for hours about life, dreams, silly jokes. Now he was slipping away. Could it be a midlife crisis? Another woman? She shook her head, starting the engine. No matter how many possibilities she considered, none made her feel better. The simplest explanation was also the most painful one: infidelity. "But I need solid proof," she told herself. Something undeniable so she couldn't be fooled or gaslit. Her phone buzzed again, this time an email notification. She glanced briefly. A name she didn't recognize. Subject line reading, "Urgent. Daniel's activity at Marriott." Her heartbeat thundered. She didn't open it yet, there was no time. But the send-off line in the preview read, "I suspect your husband is with my wife." That email alone confirmed her worst fear. She swallowed hard, pushing the tears back, rummaging for a tissue. She had a showing to get through, and she refused to break down in front of prospective buyers. But inside, her whole world had taken a blow. Leaving the office parking lot, Paula focused on her mission. Handle her real estate duties with a smile, then figure out what the hell was going on at that Marriott. The question pounded in her thoughts like a relentless drumbeat. Who is Daniel meeting there, and why is it tearing them apart? Dennis turned off the ignition, letting his truck idle in the driveway for an extra moment. The fishing trip had concluded that afternoon, and as he looked at the familiar shape of his house bathed in dusk's orange glow, he felt more uneasy than ever. The short weekend escape only served to confirm that something was off in his marriage. He stepped inside, dropping his duffel by the door. "Maria?" he called. No answer. A faint smell of pasta sauce lingered in the air, and a pot sat soaking in the sink. He found her in the living room, flipping through the channels. She wore sweatpants and an oversized sweater, an open laptop perched on the coffee table. Her eyes flicked to him, then back to the TV. "Hey," she said. "You're back earlier than I expected." He settled on the couch, leaving a bit of space between them. "We wrapped up around noon. Didn't feel like sticking around." "How was it?" she asked, sounding polite yet distant. "Catch any fish?" "Mostly just chatter," Dennis replied, carefully scanning her face. He cleared his throat. "So, did you do anything interesting while I was away?" She shrugged. "Volunteered at the hospital on Saturday, then groceries, errands. Nothing special." "And you haven't been anywhere else?" The words slipped out before he could soften them. Maria's gaze darted to him. "What do you mean?" Dennis tried to keep his tone mild. "A friend said he saw you near the Marriott last week. Were you there for some volunteer event?" Her mouth parted slightly, and for a moment the tension in the air felt electric. "Oh, the Marriott," she repeated. There was this pediatric fundraiser workshop. They needed a few hospital volunteers to help with setup. I just popped in for a couple hours." "On which day?" he probed gently. Maria's face paled. Tuesday or Wednesday? I don't remember exactly, it's been hectic." Dennis nodded, feigning acceptance, though his chest constricted. "Makes sense," he lied. She swallowed. Her eyes flicked down, betraying unease. "Let's not fight, okay? I'm exhausted." He wanted to push harder, to mention that someone saw her there Thursday, but the weariness in her voice stopped him. He exhaled, forcing a neutral expression. "We're not fighting, just trying to understand each other." A tense silence hung between them. Finally, Maria gathered her laptop, mumbled "good night," and disappeared upstairs. Dennis remained on the couch, heart pounding. He knew that story didn't line up. She was either mixing up dates or outright lying, and that terrified him. Meanwhile, across town, Paula carefully placed her phone on speaker as she sat at her kitchen table. She had dialed a contact at a private investigation firm recommended by her friend Layla. Before the line rang, she noticed an email chain with the same subject line as earlier, from someone named DG, who claimed to have evidence of Daniel's repeated visits to the Marriott. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Right now, she had to decide whether to track Daniel's car, check phone logs, or call a professional. The line connected, and a crisp, assured voice answered, "Arthur Hawkins, private investigator. How can I help?" Paula explained her suspicions in a trembling voice, though she tried to keep it concise. "My husband's credit card statements show frequent charges at a local hotel. He's been secretive, avoiding questions. I need confirmation." Arthur listened patiently. "We can do a discreet check. We'll gather photos, times, possibly talk to staff. Is that the kind of confirmation you're looking for?" She closed her eyes. "Yes. I don't want to be fooled. If Daniel's with another woman, I need to know for sure." Arthur assured her they would discuss details soon. Paula ended the call and leaned back, closing her eyes. The house felt too big and empty. In her head, she replayed the earlier email from DG claiming, "Your husband is with my wife." The sickening suspicion that this wife might be the same woman from the hospital weighed heavily on her mind. Late that night, Dennis sat at the computer, eyes fixed on a web page for GPS trackers. He wasn't proud of the step he was about to take, but desperation had its grip on him. If Maria couldn't be honest, he'd find out the truth another way. Paula, in her own silent house, was finalizing an agreement with the investigator. Two people, separated by miles yet connected by the same pain, readied themselves for answers. They had no idea just how entwined their worlds would become. A bright Thursday morning found Dennis in the garage, crouched next to the passenger side wheel of Maria's sedan. He glanced over his shoulder every few seconds, heart rattling like it might bust right out of his chest. The small GPS device he'd purchased online sat snug in his palm, lightweight, matte black. It looked unassuming, but he felt the gravity of this action weigh heavily on him. He couldn't shake the memory of her tense expression when he'd casually asked about the hotel. Her explanations didn't add up. He'd told himself 1,000 times it might be nothing, but deep down, fear gnawed at him. Today, he needed answers, or at least some tangible clue. Finally, with trembling fingers, Dennis fastened the tracker under the rear bumper, near the metal frame. "I'm sorry, Maria," he muttered under his breath, "but I have to do this." Less than an hour later, he watched from an upstairs window as Maria backed out of the driveway. He moved quickly to his laptop, opening the tracking app. A small blinking dot indicated the sedan's position, heading downtown. The day seemed to move in slow motion as he monitored her path on screen. Dennis downed 3 cups of coffee but hardly tasted a drop. Around midday, he saw the blinking dot stop at the familiar address, Marriott Hotel, downtown. A surge of adrenaline pulsed through him. "She's really there," he murmured, pressing a hand to his forehead. 1,000 questions lit up his mind. Is she meeting someone? Is it about volunteering? He recalled her mention of hospital events, but the tension in her voice earlier suggested otherwise. By 1 in the afternoon, Dennis couldn't stand it. He hurried to his truck, cranked the engine, and navigated the busy city streets until the Marriott's sleek glass exterior rose into view. Finding a discreet spot behind a row of parked cars, he killed the engine and scanned the entrances. People in business attire hurried in and out. Tourists lugged rolling suitcases across the lobby. Now and then he spotted a pair of individuals stepping outside, but never once did he see Maria or any sign of her companion. He waited, perspiration forming on his brow. Around 3 o'clock, his phone buzzed a text from work about urgent invoices. Dennis felt torn. If he stayed too long, he'd risk missing deadlines, raising suspicions. Yet if he left, he might lose the only chance to see who she was meeting. By 4, he still hadn't seen her. Finally, the GPS pinged. The sedan was moving again, apparently out the side exit of the parking structure. Dennis cursed under his breath, realizing he'd staked out the front while she'd possibly departed unnoticed through another door. He managed to catch a glimpse of her car merging into traffic, but couldn't confirm who, if anyone, was inside with her. He slumped against the driver's seat, anxiety prickling at his temples. The question hung. Was she alone in there? Doubt and dread knotted in his stomach. With no direct evidence beyond her presence at the hotel, Dennis drove back in a fog of uncertainty. Once at home, he settled at the kitchen table, half listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator. Looking at a framed family photo, Maria smiling warmly beside him at a summer BBQ, he felt a pang in his chest. He rubbed his eyes, fighting the urge to tear the photo off the wall. "I won't jump to conclusions," he told himself, exhaling slowly. "I just need more proof." That evening, when Maria returned, she tossed her purse on the couch and gave him a quick hug. "How was your day?" she asked. Dennis forced a thin smile, part of him angry that she could act so normal if she was indeed hiding something. He replied, "Busy. Yours?" Maria hesitated barely half a second before smiling. "Yeah, just running errands." The look in her eyes, the slight twitch of her lips, fueled his suspicion. Dennis nodded, concealing the storm swirling inside him. Not enough proof, he reminded himself. Still, he felt the first real crack in their marriage deepen as the evening wore on. That night, they went to bed on different sides, as if an invisible wall had grown between them. Late that afternoon, Paula was perched on her office chair, staring at a newly arrived credit card statement for Daniel's account. The pale overhead light reflected off the glossy paper, detailing several charges at the Marriott Hotel over the past month. She tapped her pen against the desk, each tap echoing the disquiet in her heart. "Why the same place? Again and again," she murmured. A gentle knock on her office door made her jolt. Her co-worker and friend, Chloe, peeked inside. "Hey, Paula, everything all right? You look a bit off." Paula mustered a shaky smile. "Busy with paperwork and personal stuff," she admitted. Chloe stepped in, closing the door softly behind her. "Want to talk about it?" Paula hesitated, glancing at the statement. "It's Daniel. I found repeated charges at the Marriott. He's been late coming home, making excuses. Now I see this. It can't be a coincidence." Chloe frowned, setting a hand on Paula's shoulder. Could he be booking for work events or renting conference rooms? "If it was for his insurance clients, he'd have told me," Paula said, frustration lacing her tone. He's never been secretive before. The phone on Paula's desk buzzed. She sighed, motioning for Chloe to hang on. Paula speaking, she answered curtly. A polite voice responded, Hello, Miss Paula, this is Rachel from the downtown Marriott. You left a message with our front desk earlier? Yes, Paula said, exchanging a quick glance with Chloe. I wanted to confirm if a certain reservation belonged to my husband. He's Daniel Parker. He might have used a corporate name or something else. Any chance you can verify? Rachel hesitated. We typically can't give out personal details, but there have been multiple reservations under a corporate insurance account with the name Daniel Parker attached. Afternoon check-ins, usually midweek. Paula's knuckles whitened around the phone. I see. Could you tell me if— I'm sorry, ma'am. That's as much as I'm allowed to say. Rachel sounded genuinely apologetic. Hope it helps, though. Before Paula could respond, the line ended. Her heart sank, a flurry of possibilities spinning in her mind. She turned to Chloe, who stood with a concerned expression. He's definitely using that place more than once, Paula breathed. And it's not just for a single quick meeting. Paula, have you talked to him directly? She set down the phone, sighing heavily. I've tried. He's evasive, acts like I'm overreacting. But the proof is piling up. Feeling restless, Paula stood and grabbed her blazer from the desk chair. If I sit here any longer, I'll lose my mind. I'm meeting a client soon, but thanks for listening, Chloe. Her friend wrapped her in a gentle hug. Call me if you need anything. Leaving the office, Paula stepped into the brisk air outside, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the sidewalk. She strode down the block, phone clutched in her hand as if it might reveal the truth she needed. She glanced once more at the online banking app, each Marriott charge glaring at her like a neon sign of betrayal. She inhaled, letting the city noise swirl around her car engines, random horns, distant shouts. I have to keep it together, she thought, but I can't keep pretending I'm not seeing what's right in front of me. That evening, Paula acted as normal as possible when Daniel finally arrived home, an hour behind schedule. She plastered on a smile, asked how his day was, cooked pasta with a tomato basil sauce that he usually loved. He offered a quick thanks, casually kissing her cheek, but never provided a full explanation for his tardiness. Her chest felt hollow. Over dinner, she tried to read his eyes for sincerity, but all she saw was a flicker of guarded tension. He asked about her work, deflecting any talk of his own. Once he retreated to the living room to check emails, Paula cleared the plates in silence. She peered at the clock. 9:17 p.m. Another evening filled with unspoken questions. As she placed the dishes in the sink, Paula's phone chimed a quick glance, showed it was another email from the unknown contact DG, who claimed to have more info about Daniel's hotel visits. Paula's hands trembled as she pressed the phone to her chest. Something told her this was only the beginning. A crisp Friday morning sun lit up the sprawl of a quiet cafe near downtown. Dennis hunched over a corner table, coffee steaming in a paper cup before him. The place smelled of roasted beans and fresh pastries. He'd arrived early, heart pounding with conflicting emotions. Would this meeting answer anything or make everything more complicated? His mind raced back to the previous day, recalling a conversation he'd had with Colin, who somehow knew Paula's name and suspected she might be Daniel's wife, the same Daniel associated with the Marriott visits. Through a few discreet inquiries, Dennis had found Paula's work email. Driven by desperation, he'd sent a single message under an alias. I believe your husband is seeing someone at the Marriott. That someone might be my wife. He never expected a reply so quickly, but Paula had responded, sounding just as rattled as he was. Now they were here, meeting face-to-face for the first time. The door chimed, and a petite woman with neat auburn hair stepped in. She wore a navy blazer and clutched her phone. Her eyes scanned the room until they met his, and her posture straightened, tension radiating from her every step. Paula? Dennis asked, standing up. She nodded. Dennis, right? They shook hands briefly, then sat. An awkward hush fell before Paula sighed. I never imagined I'd be meeting a complete stranger about this. Dennis forced a half smile. Trust me, this is the last thing I thought I'd be doing. But I appreciate you coming. She set her purse aside. You mentioned in your email you suspect your wife, Maria, is involved with Daniel. I don't know how to say this gently, but I've found repeated receipts from the Marriott on Daniel's account. It's consistent and secretive. He's definitely meeting someone. Dennis exhaled, the words hitting him like a gut punch. Maria's been showing signs, 2 strange phone calls lying about volunteer work. I followed her once, saw her car at the Marriott. She was inside for hours. He clenched his fists under the table. I waited but never spotted who she was with. Could have been Daniel. Paula pressed a shaky hand to her forehead. God, I hoped I was wrong. They exchanged details, the charges on Daniel's card, the days Maria vanished, the unsettling sense that their spouses were lying every chance they got. Paula scrolled through her phone and showed him a small spreadsheet of dates. Dennis pulled out a similar note. The alignment of times was chilling. This lines up almost perfectly, Paula said quietly, her voice wavering. It's no coincidence. A fresh wave of anger and despair washed over Dennis. He tried to remain calm. What do we do? He asked, looking Paula in the eye. She swallowed hard. I have some ideas. A friend of mine can get more details, but honestly, we might need a professional to confirm everything beyond a doubt. Dennis nodded grimly. A private investigator, right? He thought about the shaky feeling he'd had installing that GPS device, an invasion of privacy, yes, but overshadowed by the fear of not knowing. I've never been in a situation like this, he admitted. Neither have I, Paula confessed, blinking back tears. But I can't sit around hoping Daniel tells the truth. I need to know, once and for all. They both fell silent. The bustle of the cafe seemed distant. Baristas calling out orders, the hiss of espresso machines, quiet chatter from patrons. Finally, Paula took a shaky sip of water. Thank you for reaching out. At least I know I'm not crazy. Dennis nodded, eyes stinging. We might not want to meet too often or it'll draw suspicion, he said carefully. But maybe we could keep exchanging info by email or phone just until we figure out our next steps. Agreed. Paula's gaze flickered with resolve. I'll get in touch with a private investigator I heard about. They stood, awkward again, as they realized they were sharing a nightmare. I'm sorry, Dennis said softly, for all of this. Paula forced a sad smile. Yeah, me too. She left first, the bell chiming overhead. Dennis lingered a moment, feeling a mix of relief and dread. They had confirmation of something going on, yet no solid proof of the specific details. But now, at least, they weren't alone. Night fell across the city, painting the skyline with a deep cobalt brush. In Dennis's home office, a single desk lamp cast warm light onto scattered notes. Emails between him and Paula glowed on the laptop screen. After their cafe meeting, Paula had recommended reaching out to a private investigator named Arthur Hawkins. Dennis hesitated for a day, wrestling with the moral lines he never dreamed of crossing. But after another week of seeing Maria slip out with vague explanations, he caved. Now his cursor hovered over the phone number in an email signature. He dialed and waited. 2 rings later, a calm, low voice greeted him. Arthur Hawkins speaking. Dennis cleared his throat. Mr. Hawkins, I got your number from Paula Parker. She said you handle sensitive cases. I do, Arthur replied, polite yet businesslike. May I ask the nature of your situation? It's, an extramarital concern. Dennis rubbed his temples, his heart pounding. We suspect our spouses Maria, Daniel are involved with each other. We need clear evidence, not just speculation. Arthur's voice remained steady. Understood. I can set up surveillance and gather photographic or video proof if it exists. Discretion is guaranteed. They spoke for another 10 minutes, covering fees, methods, and scheduling. By the time Dennis hung up, he felt drained but oddly relieved. He fired off a quick text to Paula. I've confirmed with Hawkins. He'll start ASAP. Elsewhere, in a dimly lit bedroom, Paula stared at her phone, reading Dennis's message. Daniel was in the shower after another late meeting. She typed back, Good. Let's see if we can get the truth. A few days later, she and Dennis both received an email from Arthur with initial findings. The subject line read, Preliminary photos, please check. Paula's heart hammered as she opened it. The attached pictures were somewhat grainy hotel corridor shots from a distance. She magnified each image on her phone, scanning the silhouettes. One photograph showed a man and a woman walking side by side, the man's taller frame angled slightly toward the woman. Their faces weren't perfectly clear, but Paula recognized Daniel's posture and the jacket she'd seen him wear. The woman's hair color and profile matched Maria's. Dennis opened the same set of images at his place, his vision blurred with a mix of fury and heartbreak. He leaned in closer, but the photo was just fuzzy enough that there could be doubt if someone really wanted to deny it. For him, though, it was a stabbing confirmation. He immediately texted Paula. "That's them, I'm sure of it. We need more conclusive shots." Paula responded almost instantly. "Arthur said he's going to set up something more direct next time they meet. It's just a matter of time." Dennis couldn't help the chill that ran down his spine. He thought of the person in those hallways, someone who used to be the bright, warm Maria he loved, now sneaking around with Paula's husband. Sitting alone in the silence of his home office, he stared at the images, fists clenched. "They're together," he thought, "and we're on the outside, watching our marriages fall apart." That night, Paula lay awake, phone on her nightstand, staring into the darkness. Arthur's vague pictures flickered in her mind. Daniel was drifting away, entangled with another woman. Across town, Dennis paced the living room, unable to rest. In both their hearts, a decision was brewing. They would not confront Maria and Daniel blindly. They would wait for absolute certainty. When that moment came, they would be ready. As the city lights blinked outside their windows, one truth was certain. This was no longer just suspicion. The puzzle was coming together, piece by painful piece. And soon, there'd be no denying the reality that Maria and Daniel were hiding under the bright neon sign of the Marriott Hotel. A crisp morning light cast faint shadows across the living room walls as Dennis set his coffee mug on the table. The tension in the air felt like static before a storm, and he braced himself for the conversation he could no longer delay. Over the past week, he'd kept track of more suspicious gaps in Maria's schedule, her repeated volunteer duties that took place in or near the Marriott. Something about her eyes when she answered his questions made him certain she was hiding the truth. He found Maria in the kitchen, rummaging through the refrigerator. She wore a pale blue blouse and black slacks, hair twisted back in a neat clip. Under different circumstances, the sight of her morning routine might have felt comforting, but not today. "Hey," she said without turning around. "I'm running a little late. Could you pick up some groceries later?" Dennis cleared his throat. "We need to talk." She paused, pulling out a carton of milk. "What about—" He took a measured breath. "About the Marriott. You told me you were there for a charity event, but I checked the hospital's schedule. There wasn't any official fundraiser listed on those days." Maria stiffened, setting the carton down too hard. "Maybe it was planned last minute. I can't keep track of every detail." Dennis's voice was quiet, but unyielding. "I also know you were on the 4th floor, not a conference room. That's where the guest rooms start." She spun to face him, eyes flaring with alarm. "Why are you checking on me? That's an invasion of my privacy." He ran a hand through his hair. "Because you've been acting so distant. Because every explanation you give has holes in it." He tried to moderate his tone, but frustration seeped out. "I just want the truth." Maria's face tightened, her lips parted, then closed again, as though searching for a plausible story. "Dennis, I don't appreciate the interrogation. Yes, I was on the 4th floor, but I was just dropping something off for a sick friend from the volunteer group, okay? She had a room there for a few days after a medical procedure." "You never mentioned any friend. Why keep it a secret?" She shut the refrigerator, ignoring his question. "God, do you seriously think I'm doing something wrong? Like cheating?" Her voice wobbled at that last word. But it wasn't purely outrage. Dennis sensed a flicker of fear. A knot twisted in his chest. I don't want to accuse her outright, he thought, but her lies are so transparent. He swallowed hard. Maybe it's not cheating, but you're lying, Maria. That's what scares me. For a long moment, she didn't respond. The ticking of the kitchen clock felt ominously loud. Then Maria grabbed her purse from the counter and stepped past him. I'm late, she repeated, her words clipped. We'll talk when I get home." "Will we, though?" he asked, voice softening in desperation. She paused at the doorway, back still turned. "I said we would." Her tone held a mixture of guilt and irritation. A moment later, she was gone, leaving Dennis alone with the stifling sense of betrayal. That evening, she returned with minimal conversation, brushing off his attempts to revisit the topic. She claimed exhaustion, retreated to the bedroom, and when Dennis gently reached for her later, she flinched away. "Not tonight," she mumbled, already facing the wall. "I just can't." Dennis lay awake for hours, staring at the shadows that formed on the ceiling, feeling the growing distance between them like a canyon. We used to share everything, he thought, a dull ache settling in his chest. Now they shared only silence and secrets. Across town, Paula clutched the bank statement in her hand, knuckles white. She had confronted Daniel moments earlier, another heated exchange about the Marriott charges. This time, she refused to accept vague explanations. "You're lying!" she snapped, voice trembling with a mix of fury and heartbreak. "You said you had back-to-back client meetings, but the statements show multiple mid-afternoon check-ins at the Marriott. Every week." Daniel stood by the living room couch, his dark hair slightly disheveled, tie pulled loose around his neck. He'd just stepped through the door when Paula blocked his path. "Paula, you're overreacting," he muttered, an edge of irritation in his tone. "You don't understand how my job works. Sometimes I need a quiet place to finalize deals." Her voice rose. "A quiet place, really? And you never once mentioned it to me?" He raked a hand across his forehead. "You make it impossible to tell you anything. You always question my every move." Paula's anger flared, her gaze narrowing. "I question you because you act shady, because you ignore my calls and come home too late to see our daughter, because I see charges at a hotel for reasons you can't properly explain," Daniel huffed, moving to drop his briefcase on the couch. "I'm so tired of this fight. You want me to show you a receipt for every breath I take now?" Her eyes blazed. "That's not what this is about, and you know it. I just want honesty. If you can't even give me that, then what are we doing here?" He stepped forward, trying to calm his tone but failing at the condescension creeping in. "Paula, you've always been controlling. You think my entire life has to revolve around your schedule. The minute I deviate, you assume the worst." Tears pricked at her eyes. "Don't twist this back on me," she hissed. "I sacrificed so much for us, my time, my resources. Now you're using my trust against me." Daniel slammed a hand against the side of the couch. "Fine, think what you want. I can't live under this microscope." "Then don't!" Paula spat out, surprising even herself with the force of her words. A tremor coursed through her. "If you want to come and go without telling me the truth, go right ahead, but don't expect me to stand here and play the fool." He glared at her, face red. For a moment, Paula feared he might lash out physically, but he merely snatched his keys off the coffee table. "I'm going out," he muttered. "I can't deal with you right now." She watched the door slam behind him. In the silence that followed, she realized her hands were shaking. Tears threatened to spill, but she held them at bay, refusing to break down in the middle of the living room. With a shaky exhale, Paula grabbed her purse, phone, and a spare change of clothes. She dialed her longtime friend, Chloe, who picked up on the second ring. "Chloe, I need a place to stay tonight." Minutes later, she was in her car, blinking back tears at every red light. The city lights blurred around her, matching the chaos in her mind. Daniel's betrayal felt suffocating, yet it was his denials that stung more. If he at least admitted it, we'd have something real to talk about. Pulling up to Chloe's suburban home, Paula forced a calm breath. She needed a safe space just for one night to collect her thoughts. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, only that she couldn't keep living under the same roof with Daniel's endless lies. Saturday morning dawned cloudy. Dennis was nursing his second cup of coffee when the door swung open and Ethan, his oldest son, ambled in. A college student, Ethan had texted the night before saying he'd be in town for the weekend. "Dad," Ethan called, dropping his duffel by the entrance. "Mom said she might be at the hospital this morning?" Dennis's heart twisted. "She left early, yeah." In truth, Maria had rushed out with hardly a word, again. Ethan regarded him with concern. "Everything okay?" He took in the unkempt living room, the slight lines of tension around his father's eyes. For a moment, Dennis wanted to unload everything his suspicions, the bitter arguments, the GPS device hidden on Maria's car. But he held back. "We're just going through a rough patch," he admitted quietly, motioning Ethan to sit. They ended up on the couch, the old leather squeaking beneath them. Ethan clasped his hands, glancing at his dad. "Is it serious?" Dennis hesitated, recalling the years he spent teaching Ethan to fish, to ride a bike, to be honest and strong. Now, he felt the odd pang that he himself had to hide the painful truth. "Serious enough," Dennis finally said. "We'll work it out." "Don't worry too much, okay?" Ethan frowned. "I'm here if you need me, but you seem different, less sure of yourself." Dennis mustered a wry smile. "I appreciate it, kiddo, but let's not dwell on it right now. We'll figure things out." At Chloe's place, Paul awoke in the spare bedroom to the sound of her phone buzzing. It was her daughter, Haley, calling from her friend's house. "Mom, I stopped by the house and Dad isn't here. Are you okay?" Haley sounded worried. Paula closed her eyes, forcing composure. "I'm fine, sweetie. I had to step out last night. Your dad and I had a disagreement. I'll be home soon, or maybe tomorrow." Silence. Then Haley's voice lowered. "You two have been so distant lately. Is something really wrong?" Paula swallowed, searching for the right words to protect her child from the harsh reality. "We're just working through some issues. Nothing for you to worry about." Haley sighed softly. "Mom, you can tell me if something's happening. I'm not a little kid anymore." A brief spark of tears threatened Paula's composure, but she pushed it down. "I know. Thank you, honey. I'll call you later, okay?" Hanging up, she leaned her head against the pillow, a wave of sadness washing over her. She realized that she and Daniel's conflict was starting to affect Haley more than she'd hoped. And in that moment, Paula felt an even stronger drive to get real answers no matter how painful they might be. Late Sunday evening, Dennis found himself in the corner booth of a modest diner. He'd arranged a second meeting with Paula. They'd agreed a public, low-key spot would draw less attention. The warm glow of neon lights outside reflected off the metallic edges of the tables. The hum of quiet conversation and the clink of utensils provided just enough background noise for their tense exchange. Paula arrived, eyes puffy but determined, a beige coat draped over her shoulders. She slid into the booth across from Dennis, offering a small nod. "Thanks for meeting me again. This whole thing is getting harder by the day." He nodded, pushing a glass of water toward her. "Tell me about it." She inhaled shakily. "I left home after a big fight with Daniel. I just couldn't stand the lies anymore. I'm staying with a friend. You?" Dennis rubbed his temples. "Maria's still living with me, but it's like she's a stranger. I confronted her about specific times and floors at the Marriott. She just made up some story about a sick friend." He paused, lips thinning. "She's avoiding intimacy altogether, like even a hug is too much." Paula folded her hands on the table, fiddling with a napkin. "I have more photos from the PI. He caught Daniel's license plate leaving the hotel the same day Maria's car was there. The timestamps match." She pulled out her phone, showing him the digital images. Dennis braced himself and stared at the screen. The images were clearer than the first batch. One picture in particular revealed Daniel stepping into a black SUV with a blurred second figure in the passenger seat. In another, Maria's sedan could be seen exiting the underground garage. It didn't show them side by side, but the timing and location were undeniable. He exhaled slowly, a hollow feeling spreading in his chest. "They're obviously coordinating, or meeting." Paula's voice broke. "I still can't believe it. A part of me hopes we're wrong, that there's some bizarre misunderstanding." Dennis set his jaw, glancing at the overhead TV screen flickering with muted news. "I used to think that too, but the more I see, the less hope I have." They fell into a heavy silence. Outside, a light rain began to patter against the windows, the neon sign glowing in streaks across the puddles in the parking lot. Finally, Paula cleared her throat. "Where do we go from here?" Dennis watched a raindrop slide down the glass. "I guess we see if the PI can get something conclusive. Actual pictures of them together, something they can't deny." She nodded. If they're physically involved, it's only a matter of time before they slip up. Dennis glanced at her, noticing the slight tremor in her hands. Without thinking, he reached across the table, gave her fingers a gentle squeeze. "We'll get through this," he said, voice soft. "You're not alone." Paula's eyes watered, but she managed a grateful smile. "Thank you, Dennis." They spoke for another hour, sharing the emotional weight of their spouse's deceit. Though they avoided explicitly discussing their budding sense of connection, the comfort they found in each other's presence was palpable. It was an odd, bittersweet solace born of heartbreak, yet offering the warmth of mutual understanding. When they finally parted ways in the rain-slicked parking lot, Paula hesitated. "Text me if anything changes," she whispered, hugging her coat around her. Dennis nodded, opening his umbrella. "I will. You take care, Paula." As he walked away, his mind buzzed with conflicting feelings: anger, betrayal, and the faint but growing bond with the woman who shared his pain. In the watery reflection of the street lamp, he saw his own uncertain face. "I never wanted this," he thought, "but I can't go back now." The diner's neon lights shrank behind him, overshadowed by the cold night sky. Inside both Dennis and Paula, a realization took root. They were preparing in their own ways to confront Maria and Daniel. The evidence was almost there. The heartbreak was definitely real, and the next step would be a direct showdown, one that neither of them wanted, yet both recognized was coming. A thin layer of dusk blanketed the city skyline as Dennis sat at his kitchen table, the single overhead light casting a pale circle onto his laptop. His heart thumped violently while he waited for the email from Arthur Hawkins, the private investigator. Each beep of an incoming message made him jump, but none so far carried the subject line he both dreaded and needed to see. Finally, ping. There it was. Subject: conclusive evidence. Daniel and Maria. His chest clenched. Taking a breath so sharp it hurt, he clicked it open. Attached were high-resolution images that left little room for doubt. The first photo showed a semi-private corner in the Marriott hallway, where Maria, hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, leaned close to Daniel, who was touching her shoulder. A second captured them in a passionate kiss near the elevator bank. A short snippet of video was included, showing them entering a room together, door shutting behind them. The ache in Dennis's stomach twisted into cold fury. There they were, the wife he'd loved for over 20 years, and the husband of a woman he'd come to respect. He forced himself to watch the grainy video, feeling nauseous as Daniel's hand trailed across Maria's waist. So it's real, he thought. They're not just meeting, they're together. His phone chimed. Checking it, he saw a text from Paula. "Arthur sent me the same email. I'm so sorry. This is worse than I ever imagined." Dennis swallowed. He typed back, hands trembling. "We have our proof. No more excuses. We should confront them next time they meet." Paula's response came seconds later. "Agreed. I'll ask Arthur to track their next rendezvous. Let me know if you're ready." They both knew it was time to end the charade time to catch Daniel and Maria in person. Yet as Dennis closed the email, a hollow ache replaced the initial rush of anger. He stared at a family photo on the counter, him, Maria, and their kids laughing over a backyard barbecue. That memory felt a lifetime away. That night, Maria came home later than usual, apparently from yet another hospital event. Dennis didn't challenge her. He simply watched her slip upstairs, realizing that his silence was no longer about sparing her feelings. It was about waiting for the moment to finally reveal that he knew every deceitful detail. 1 week later, the arrangement was set. Arthur texted both Paula and Dennis around 1 p.m. Subject: Daniel checks into room 408 at Marwood Suites, his usual alias. Maria's car is here too. They're heading to the pool area out back. The location was different from the Marriott, a less busy boutique hotel on the outskirts of town. Possibly they'd switched spots to avoid suspicion. But the detective's network had tracked them anyway. Dennis's hands shook as he parked in a side lot near the building. Paula pulled in moments later. She stepped out, her face pale and determined, wearing jeans and a light jacket. No words were needed. They locked eyes, confirming they were in this together. Arthur, parked behind them, gave a quick nod. "They're in the private pool area behind the building," he whispered. "I can guide you through the side entrance if you want the element of surprise." Dennis and Paula exchanged a glance, hearts pounding. "Let's do this," Paula breathed. They followed Arthur around the exterior walkway, lined with tall hedges that shielded the pool from the main street. As they neared a gated entry, muffled laughter and the faint splash of water reached their ears. Tension gripped Dennis's chest like a vice. Slowly, the detective opened the gate. The air smelled of chlorine and damp concrete. Near the far corner of the pool, Daniel and Maria were entwined on a lounge chair, wearing swimsuits, lost in their own world. Daniel leaned in, murmuring something that made Maria giggle. Their hands were all over each other, a chillingly intimate scene. A rush of adrenaline propelled Dennis forward. "Maria!" he shouted, voice cracking with a mix of rage and heartbreak. Maria's head snapped around, eyes wide in sheer panic. Daniel shot up, stepping protectively in front of her. "What the hell?" Paula appeared at Dennis's side, face drawn in anger. "Daniel!" she said coldly. "This is what you've been doing in your so-called client meetings?" In that instant, chaos erupted. Maria scrambled to her feet, covering her chest with a towel, stammering, "Dennis, wait, it's not!" Daniel advanced, fists clenched. "What are you doing here? How dare you invade our privacy?" His tone was laced with venom, the same false bravado that once fooled Paula. The heated tension soared. Dennis took 2 steps closer. "Privacy? You're my wife, Maria, and you—" He pointed at Daniel. "You've been lying to Paula for months." Daniel's lips curled. "Back off, or I swear." Crack. Daniel swung at Dennis, fist connecting with his shoulder. Dennis stumbled, bracing against the lounge chair to keep from falling into the water. Paula screamed, "Stop it!" In a surge of protective fury, Dennis managed to push Daniel back. "You miserable!" he hissed, voice trembling with anger and hurt. But before he could react further, Daniel rushed him again, punching him squarely in the jaw this time. Dennis reeled, pain exploding behind his eyes. Paula fumbled for her phone, dialing 911 with shaking fingers. "Send the police!" she cried. "We have an assault at the Marwood Suites pool area. Please, hurry!" Daniel stood there, breathing hard, chest heaving, while Maria clung to a towel, tears streaming down her face. Arthur carefully positioned himself at a distance, camera phone capturing every second. "Dennis," Maria sobbed, stepping forward as though to help him. "I never wanted this to happen." He held up a hand, staggering upright. Don't you dare!" The betrayal scorched him, more potent than the physical pain. The hotel staff, alarmed by the commotion, rushed in. Moments later, sirens wailed in the distance. Daniel tried to step away, but Paula blocked him. "You're not leaving," she spat, voice trembling with rage. "You can't just hurt people and run." Police officers arrived, handcuffing Daniel after a brief scuffle. Daniel hurled curses as they led him away, glaring with unrepentant fury at Dennis and Paula. Meanwhile, Maria stood off to the side, sobbing quietly, the reality of her secrets laid bare. Dennis could only stare, chest aching at the woman he thought he knew. Within the hour, the pool area cleared. Daniel was taken to the station, charged with assault. Hotel security escorted Paula, Dennis, and Maria inside to talk to the police. Statements were taken, forms were signed. Arthur offered to forward the video footage to the authorities. Eventually, the stunned group dispersed. Paula drove home alone, though home felt like a foreign concept without Daniel's presence. Dennis led Maria to his truck in a haze of heartbreak. "Dennis," Maria pleaded, her eyes rimmed red. She wore a hastily thrown-on dress from her pool bag. "Can we just talk? We can fix this." "I'm so sorry. I was confused, and Daniel, he—" "Confused?" Dennis repeated bitterly, unlocking the passenger door. "So your idea of confusion was lying to me for months, sneaking around with Paula's husband." His voice cracked with grief-laced anger. She trembled, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I swear it wasn't just I felt ignored, unappreciated at home. Daniel listened to me, made me feel special, but I never wanted to hurt you like this." He slammed the truck door once she was inside, taking a moment to steady himself before sliding behind the wheel. The drive back was eerily silent. Maria tried to explain again, but every word felt like a barb in Dennis's already shattered trust. When they reached the house, he parked and turned to her. "Pack a bag. I want you gone." The finality in his tone caused fresh tears to spill down her cheeks. "Dennis, please." "No." His voice was like granite. "You and Daniel didn't care about the damage you'd do. This is done." She stared, stunned at his resolve. The man she once knew as gentle and forgiving now wore an expression of pure hurt and betrayal. Without another word, Maria slipped inside, presumably to gather essentials. Meanwhile, across town, Paula sat on her living room couch, hugging her knees. The house felt unbearably quiet. A photo of her daughter, Haley, at a school event sat on the coffee table. Paula's mind churned, imagining how to explain that Daniel might not come home again, how to tell her child that their family was irreparably fractured. Moments later, the phone rang. It was Chloe, Paula's closest friend. "Paula, I heard the police scanner mention Daniel. Are you okay?" Paula inhaled a shaky breath, recounting the bare facts. Chloe's gasps of shock felt like a small comfort. At least someone cared. "He assaulted Dennis. He's in custody," Paula finished. "I don't know how to feel. Angry? Relieved?" Chloe's voice was gentle. "Take it one moment at a time, Paula. You're strong. He can't keep hurting you." Paula murmured her thanks and hung up. For a moment, she stared out the window at the waning daylight, feeling a strange sense of relief that at least the lies were over, replaced by harsh, undeniable truth. That evening, various calls and texts came in from concerned friends. Paul, Colin, and Mark Dennis's fishing buddies found out in a flurry of group chat messages. They demanded to know if Dennis was okay, if Maria was safe, if they could do anything to help. Dennis responded sparingly, explaining he'd handle it but appreciated their concern. The next morning brought a stark shift. Daniel, having spent the night in a holding cell, was due to see a judge for his assault charge. Paula didn't bother going to the courthouse. She spent those hours packing a few of his belongings into boxes. She had no intention of letting him return. Around noon, Dennis drove downtown to meet Arthur Hawkins and a lawyer friend, Rebecca Lee, whom Arthur had recommended. In a small, stark conference room, Rebecca laid out the basics. "You have grounds for divorce on the basis of adultery, plus the physical assault factor if you want to pursue any criminal or civil claims. The video is pretty damning evidence." Dennis nodded numbly, every mention of adultery twisting the knife further. "I just want to finalize this so I can move on," he said quietly. "I can't live with her, not anymore." Rebecca slid a set of papers toward him. "This is the initial draft. Once you sign, we can file the petition. I assume you're requesting she vacates the marital home?" Dennis swallowed, recalling the memory of Maria tearfully shoving clothes into a suitcase. "Yes," he managed, voice tight. "She's already gone." Paula, in a separate meeting at the same law firm, quietly explained the situation with Daniel. Her gaze fixed on the window as she spoke. "He assaulted Dennis. He's facing charges. I need a formal separation." "I'm done." The lawyer, an older man with kind eyes, nodded sympathetically. "I'll prepare the documents. Given Daniel's arrest, you might also file a restraining order if you're concerned for your safety." She exhaled, relief and sorrow tangling inside. "I'll think about it." She couldn't quite believe her marriage had unraveled so explosively, and yet deep down she felt an odd sense of liberation. No more deception, no more illusions. By day's end, both Dennis and Paula walked out of the law offices carrying manila envelopes stuffed with the first steps toward legal freedom. They exchanged a tired, understanding glance in the hallway. Words weren't necessary. Their eyes communicated the shared heartbreak and the flicker of strength that kept them moving forward. Meanwhile, Maria had retreated to a friend's apartment on the other side of town, distraught, grappling with the consequences of her actions. She tried calling Dennis numerous times, leaving tearful voicemails. Each one went unanswered. She realized belatedly that her entire world family, marriage, and security was collapsing under the weight of her betrayal. Daniel, released on bail pending trial, slinked away to a motel. He spent his hours calling old associates for help, but no one wanted to be involved. Paula changed the locks on the home they once shared. His half-baked attempts to contact her met with cold silence. And so, in the grim hush of a late spring evening, 2 marriages lay in ruins. The final illusions of secrecy had shattered in a single dramatic confrontation. A path of tangled emotions now stretched out before them, filled with lawyers, court proceedings, and the raw process of letting go. For Dennis and Paula, though, there was a glimmer of clarity amid the wreckage. The knowledge that, whatever came next, The weight of deceit was finally gone. They'd paid dearly for the truth, but in time, maybe they could find the space to heal. A thin layer of morning fog lingered outside Dennis's house, the same house Maria had once decorated with cheerful potted plants and family photos. Now, the living room walls felt barren, as if the warmth had been stripped away with Maria's belongings. Dennis sipped coffee at the kitchen counter, his phone buzzing on silent mode beside him. He hadn't felt like talking to anyone for days. He glanced at the boxes stacked by the hallway, Maria's clothes and personal effects. She had taken most of them earlier in the week, and the remainder sat waiting for pickup, a painful reminder that his marriage was truly over. A soft knock on the door jarred him from his thoughts. Opening it, he found his oldest son, Ethan, carrying a duffel bag. "Hey, Dad," Ethan said quietly, stepping inside. The tension was palpable, neither reached for a hug. Instead, Ethan set the bag down and glanced around at the partially empty living room. "You okay? I mean, I heard about everything." Dennis exhaled, mustering a tired smile. "I'm managing. Sorry you have to see it like this." Ethan shrugged, eyes darting to the stacked boxes. "Where's Mom?" "She's staying with a friend." He leaned against the couch arm. "We haven't talked much beyond logistics." Silence. Then Ethan fiddled with a stray thread on his jacket. "I'm not going to pretend I understand all this," he admitted. "It's just weird. Feels like yesterday we were all sitting at the table, laughing about me going off to college. Now everything's upside down." Dennis's chest constricted. "I'm sorry. Sometimes life changes faster than we expect. I wish it hadn't come to this." Ethan gave a small, sad nod. "If you need help with anything, I'm here for the weekend." "Thanks, son," Dennis replied softly. "Right now, I'm just taking it day by day." Across town, Paula sat alone in a rental duplex she'd arranged on short notice. Sunlight filtered through the living room window, highlighting the dust motes swirling in the air. She scrolled through an online listing of available homes, biting her lip. Her daughter, Haley, emerged from the makeshift bedroom. "I still don't get why we had to move," Haley muttered, crossing her arms. "Couldn't Dad have left instead?" Paula sighed. "It was complicated. I changed the locks on the house, but that place had too many painful memories for me. Staying there felt suffocating." Haley sank into a chair. "I miss how things used to be." Her words stung, and Paula swallowed against the tightness in her throat. "Me too," she whispered. "But for now, we have each other. We'll figure out the rest." Just then, her phone buzzed an incoming text from Dennis. "How are you holding up? Let me know if you need anything." She hesitated before typing back. "Trying to settle in. Thank you for asking. How about you?" His reply came swiftly. "I'm okay." Ethan showed up. "It's awkward, but we'll manage." Paula pressed her lips together. They had both been flung into single life again, unexpectedly. Neither wanted to dwell on it, but each found comfort in knowing they weren't alone in the storm. Later that week, Dennis and Paula met at a small cafe near the river. The sky overhead was a serene shade of powder blue, a sharp contrast to the turmoil in their lives. They took a table by the window. A soft breeze carried the fresh scent of spring blossoms inside every time a customer opened the door. Dennis wrapped his hands around a steaming mug of tea, gaze distant. "I can't shake this nagging thought. What if I'd been a better husband? Would Maria have strayed?" He cast a self-conscious look Paula's way, as though embarrassed to share his vulnerability. Paula brushed a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "You're not alone in that. I keep thinking maybe I pushed Daniel away. Maybe I was too absorbed in my real estate business, not noticing how unhappy he was." She sighed heavily. The guilt is exhausting. The cafe chatter around them formed a gentle murmur, voices exchanging pleasantries, the hiss of the espresso machine. It made their confessions feel oddly intimate, as if they were in a bubble of shared remorse. Dennis shook his head. "We can't blame ourselves for their choices. They could have talked to us, asked for counseling or anything, really. Instead, they lied." Paula's eyes clouded with emotion. "I know you're right, but part of me keeps replaying scenes in my head thinking I missed signals. Like the first time Daniel came home late, I should have demanded honesty then." A brief silence fell, thick with regret. Then Dennis cleared his throat. I'm glad we can talk about this, though. I don't feel so alone. Paula managed a small smile. Me too. Sometimes it feels like you're the only person who truly understands what I'm going through. They exchanged a look layered with mutual empathy. No romantic words were spoken, but the warmth between them offered a balm to their lingering self-doubts. That evening, Dennis found himself flipping through old photo albums. The images of past vacations, birthday parties, and holiday gatherings all had Maria's smiling face. His heart twisted painfully at the final, bitter truth. Those memories would never be repeated. Yet a quiet sense of relief also grew inside him. At least the lies were over. Meanwhile, Paula sat on the edge of her temporary bed, the muted hum of traffic drifting through the window. She told Haley goodnight, then turned off the main light. In the soft glow of the bedside lamp, she allowed herself a moment of tears. Not a storm of weeping, just a gentle release. She pictured Daniel's broken promises and let the tears fall. Then she exhaled, whispering to herself, "I'll make it through." 2 weeks later, the swirl of legal procedures continued. Dennis and Maria exchanged tense emails through their respective lawyers, hashing out the division of assets and parental responsibilities for their younger kids. Paula did the same regarding her marital home with Daniel, determined to protect her daughter's interests. In the midst of it all, a surprise voicemail from Maria popped up on Dennis's phone late one afternoon. He listened with a mixture of dread and concern. "Dennis, I know I messed up. I hurt you. I'm not asking for forgiveness right now, but I need to see you talk in person. Please." Dennis stood in his driveway, phone in hand, heart pounding. He considered ignoring it, but something in her voice, raw regret, made him hesitate. He texted Paula for advice. "Maria wants to meet. Should I?" Paula's answer came gently. "That's your call. Just protect yourself emotionally. She can't undo the past, you know." Later that evening, Dennis met Maria at a park near their old neighborhood. She looked drawn, eyes rimmed with sorrow. A faint breeze stirred the swing sets, reminding Dennis of times he'd brought their kids to this very spot. Maria spoke in halting phrases, apologizing for the betrayal, the lies. She explained, not with excuses, but to show she was wrestling with her own guilt. Dennis listened quietly, feeling anger flare at moments, but also pity. By the end of their short conversation, he realized he couldn't hate her, no matter how much it hurt. He simply couldn't live with her betrayal. "I wish we could go back," Maria said, tears glistening. "But I understand if we can't." Dennis nodded, voice thick. "I'm filing for the divorce. We can't fix this. Too much damage." She swallowed hard. "I figured. I'm sorry, truly." They parted ways, each haunted by memories of what might have been. Meanwhile, Paula found her own routine shifting. She had coffee more often with Chloe, who offered moral support. Her daughter Haley began adjusting to the new duplex. Although occasional arguments flared, Haley demanded to know if Dad was coming back. Paula answered as gently as she could, explaining she felt safer without Daniel around. The uneasy calm of separation replaced the constant fear of lies. During a quiet Saturday, Paula and Dennis ended up chatting on the phone for nearly an hour. What started as a simple check-in morphed into them laughing about random childhood memories, discussing future career goals, even joking about trying new hobbies. Unspoken feelings bubbled beneath the surface. The ease of their conversation hinted at more than just commiseration. One Sunday afternoon, Dennis invited Paula to a small barbecue at Paul's place. Their mutual friend wanted to cheer them up. Surrounded by the smell of grilled burgers and the chatter of close friends, they caught glimpses of each other across the yard, exchanging smiles that contained subtle sparks. Colin and Mark, noticing their closeness, shot each other curious glances but said nothing. The warmth in Paula's eyes as she handed Dennis a cold soda spoke volumes. For the first time in weeks, they both felt a glimmer of happiness. The sun hung low in a clear spring sky as Dennis stood on the porch of his soon-to-be-former house. A real estate sign was anchored in the front yard, proclaiming "for sale" in bold letters. He ran a hand over the porch railing, remembering the day he'd built it with Maria's father. The nostalgia stung, but he inhaled deeply, letting acceptance settle in. Paula stepped out of her car, waving a folder in hand. "Hey," she greeted softly. "You ready to go over the listing details?" Dennis nodded. They'd agreed Paula, with her real estate expertise, would help finalize the sale process. It felt surreal, but also strangely fitting, both of them forging new starts from the ashes of the old. They walked through the house, checking for any last-minute fixes or overlooked items. The walls, now stripped of family photos, seemed larger. Echoes of memories lingered like faint shadows: Christmas mornings, kids' birthdays, late-night laughter. But the finality of the empty space offered closure. After an hour of paperwork, they settled in the living room with just 2 foldable chairs for seating. Paula tapped her pen against the folder. "I think we're good. I'll have the updated listing online by tomorrow morning." "Thanks," Dennis said, voice low. "It means a lot that you're helping." She shrugged lightly. "It's the least I can do." A comfortable silence enveloped them. Then Paula drew a deep breath. "So how are you handling everything else? The legal side? The emotional side?" He exhaled. "It's tough, but every day it gets a bit clearer. My kids, well, they're still grappling with it. But I'm determined to be honest with them." A small smile touched Paula's lips. "Yeah, Haley still asks about Daniel sometimes. I just try to be truthful without letting anger poison her view of him." Dennis glanced up, meeting Paula's eyes. In that moment, the unspoken connection they'd been dancing around for weeks felt undeniable. He gently reached for her hand, lacing their fingers together. "I'm glad we have each other to lean on." Paula's cheeks warmed, but she didn't pull away. "Me too," she whispered. "I wasn't expecting this, but I care about you, Dennis. More than just as a friend going through the same nightmare." His heart pounded, a mixture of relief and excitement. "I feel the same." They lingered there, hands entwined in the echoing hush of the empty house, no words needed to confirm the bond forming between them. Whatever lay ahead, court hearings, final divorces, disapproving looks from some circles, the spark they shared gave them hope that not all was lost. That evening, Dennis texted Paula, "The sale listing looks great. Let's talk tomorrow. Maybe do dinner?" She answered with an enthusiastic, "Sounds perfect." Though their old lives were dismantling piece by piece, Part 5 drew to a close with the promise of something new. The chaos of heartbreak had left scars, but in the quiet moments, both Dennis and Paula found glimpses of healing, the seeds of a potential future together, and the courage to step forward into it. A warm breeze drifted across the courthouse steps as Dennis parked his car and walked up the wide, worn stairs. He clutched a folder of documents, evidence of Daniel's assault, along with details about his divorce from Maria. Each step he took felt heavier. Behind him, Paula emerged from a different car, wearing a subdued gray blazer, her expression a mix of resolve and anxiety. They exchanged a small nod, then entered the courthouse lobby. Cool, recycled air brushed their faces, and the slight echo of footsteps created a hushed tension. This was the day Daniel would stand before a judge for the assault charges, and possibly for any additional ramifications if proven guilty beyond that initial incident. Paula's lawyer, Mr. Avery, was already waiting inside, flipping through papers. He gestured them over, voice low. "Daniel's here with his attorney. Maria's supposed to arrive, though I'm not sure if she will. We'll get called in soon." Dennis felt his stomach churn. He cast Paula a sidelong glance. "You all right?" She let out a slow breath. "I think so. Just never imagined we'd be here testifying about Daniel's violence." Before they could exchange more words, a court assistant stepped forward and guided them to a small hearing room. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed softly. A judge, a woman with kind but firm eyes, looked down from the bench. Daniel sat at the defense table, posture rigid, suit slightly wrinkled. He barely looked at Paula or Dennis, though his jaw clenched when he caught sight of them. His lawyer whispered something in his ear, and Daniel gave a curt nod. The proceedings began. The prosecutor outlined the assault charge, referencing police reports and the video footage provided by Arthur Hawkins, the private investigator. Dennis shifted uneasily as the video was shown on a small monitor. The clip captured the moment Daniel struck him by the pool, followed by Paula's panicked voice calling 911. The memory made Dennis's jaw ache anew. Daniel's attorney tried to minimize the incident, framing it as a heated misunderstanding. But the judge's expression remained serious as she watched the video. "A misunderstanding that involved a clear physical attack," she noted dryly. During testimony, Paula described the tension leading up to that day, Daniel's repeated lies, the confrontation, and his unprovoked blow. Her hands trembled slightly as she recounted the details, but her voice never faltered. Finally, Daniel took the stand, looking stiff. "I regret my actions," he said, eyes flitting from the judge to Dennis. "I was under extreme stress, family and marital issues. I lost control." He paused, inhaling. "I'm sorry, I truly am." Dennis felt an unexpected pang of pity. Despite everything, seeing Daniel's regret was unsettling, but that doesn't erase what happened. Once arguments concluded, the judge conferred with counsel. The final ruling: Daniel was found guilty of misdemeanor assault. He would serve probation and mandatory anger management classes. Should he violate any terms, a short jail sentence loomed. Daniel swallowed hard, nodding at the judge. Paula exhaled, relief mingling with sorrow. She turned to Dennis, whose shoulders relaxed ever so slightly. One piece of justice had been done. After the court session, Paula and Dennis lingered outside in the mild sunlight. People bustled around them, lawyers, families, court staff, yet the two stood in a bubble of shared reflection. "So that's it," Paula murmured. "He's on probation. No real jail time." Dennis rubbed his neck. "Honestly, the outcome could have been worse or better, but at least there's some accountability, and we're both free to finalize our divorces without fear he'll lash out again." They parted ways for a few hours. Dennis, carrying a second set of papers, headed to a smaller administrative courtroom for the formal finalization of his divorce from Maria. Arthur Hawkins, though primarily a PI, attended as a witness regarding the affair evidence if needed. But Maria never showed. Her lawyer explained she was too distraught to appear, yet was not contesting the divorce terms. All through the short hearing, Dennis felt an odd numbness. The judge glanced through the documentation photos, text messages, bank records, and signaled acceptance of the separation agreement. With a few signatures, Dennis's marriage of over 20 years ended in less than 20 minutes. Stepping outside, he spotted a familiar figure leaning against a pillar, Maria. Despite not entering the courtroom, she'd come after all, eyes red and puffy. She clutched her purse, looking small against the towering stone columns. He approached carefully. "I thought you weren't coming in," he said softly. She shook her head, watery smile flickering. "I couldn't bear hearing all the evidence, but I wanted to talk to you just once more." Dennis swallowed. "I'm listening." Tears welled in her eyes as she began haltingly. "I can never change what I did. I'm ashamed. I lost you, lost our family's trust. Just know I realize now how deeply I messed up." He inhaled, forcing steadiness. "There's no undoing the past. You made your choices. I hope someday you find peace." She nodded, tears streaking her cheeks. "And you too. I truly hope you can be happy." They stood in silence for a beat. Then Maria turned to leave. She paused once, glancing over her shoulder as though wanting to say more, but she said nothing. A moment later, she was gone, swallowed by the courthouse crowd. And for Dennis, it felt like a final page turned. That same day, Paula faced her own closure. At a separate hearing, Daniel appeared, flanked by his attorney to proceed with their divorce. The evidence of his affair and assault solidified the outcome. He attempted an apology in a monotone voice, but Paula just stared at him. The old love she once felt extinguished by betrayal and anger. The judge swiftly confirmed the divorce. By late afternoon, Paula stood outside, the crisp autumn air brushing her cheeks. She leaned against a railing, phone in hand, about to text Dennis. But a shuffle behind made her glance back. Daniel hovered awkwardly, gaze hollow. "Paula," he said, voice raspy. "I know it's pointless, but She lifted a hand. "Don't. Please. We're done." He exhaled, shoulders slumping. "Take care of yourself," he finally said, turning away. Paula watched him go. She felt the pang of old memories, glimpses of their earlier years, the promise of a stable family. Now everything had collapsed, yet a weight lifted, replaced by clarity, no more illusions. A few weeks later, autumn leaves swirled around a cozy suburban backyard where Paul, one of Dennis's close fishing buddies, hosted a small celebratory barbecue. This time, the occasion was twofold: bidding farewell to the old turmoil and offering moral support to Dennis and Paula, who'd each finalized their divorces. Ethan, Lily, and Colin, Dennis's children, showed up hesitantly, not sure how to address their newly divorced father. Haley, Paula's daughter, clung to her mother at first, a bit wary. The tension melted somewhat under the warm glow of string lights and the enticing aroma of grilled burgers. Paul, flipping patties by the grill, raised a spatula in greeting. "Glad everyone could make it. Let's keep it laid back, no heavy drama allowed." Dennis, wearing a casual sweater and jeans, gave a half smile. "Thanks for hosting, man. We needed this." Colin and Mark, also part of the fishing group, drifted over, cracking jokes about the old days. Paula found herself chatting with Lily, who asked shyly, "So are you and Dad like a couple now?" Paula blinked, cheeks warming. "We're, seeing each other, yes. But we're also taking things slowly. There's a lot to figure out." Lily nodded thoughtfully. "Well, I always liked you." She offered a small grin. "Dad seems happier around you." Across the yard, Ethan and Haley ended up sharing stories about college life and future plans, both relieved they had someone close in age to talk to. The awkwardness eased as laughter and casual conversation took over. For a moment, everyone relaxed in the sense of an impromptu, blended gathering. Later that evening, the group drifted into nostalgic chatter about earlier times, fishing trips, family vacations, or funny mishaps. Dennis caught Paula's eye from across the fire pit. A mutual understanding passed between them. It wasn't about erasing the past, but building something better in its wake. Before leaving, the families decided on a short camping excursion next month, reminiscent of the old traditions. "We all need fresh air," Mark joked. "And I want to see if Dennis can still bait a hook properly after all this drama." A ripple of laughter ensued. The night ended on a note of subdued optimism, each person heading home with a spark of hope. Despite the heartbreak that had preceded it, there was a genuine sense of forging a new path forward. Several months later, a crisp winter morning dawned clear and bright. The final legal steps behind them, Dennis and Paula each stood as officially single divorced from their respective spouses, free to shape their futures. Yet they'd discovered a deeper bond through the shared pain and understanding. On this particular Saturday, they arrived together at a scenic overlook by the river, a place that boasted sprawling views of the water and distant snow-capped hills. Dennis had suggested it for a casual daytime picnic, though Paula suspected something more lay behind his invitation. Bundled in warm coats, they spread out a blanket under a tall cedar. The air carried a faint tang of pine and the soft hush of the flowing current below. While they sipped coffee from thermoses, Paula's gaze roamed the panorama of white-dusted trees, breath pluming in the cold air. "It's beautiful," she murmured. Dennis nodded, shifting slightly to face her. "I wanted to say thank you for being there through all this." He paused, voice gentle. "I know it's been complicated. We both got hurt, and we lost a lot, but we also found each other." Paula's heart gave a flutter. She set down her cup. "I'm grateful, too. We turned to each other at our worst moments, and that means a lot." He reached into his pocket, her eyes widening as he pulled out a small box. "I don't want to rush anything, but I also know I don't want to let another day go by without telling you how I feel." She stared, breath catching in her throat. He opened the box, revealing a simple, elegant ring. Not a huge diamond, just a modest setting that sparkled in the morning sun. "I'm not asking for a big wedding or to overshadow everything we've gone through," Dennis said, his voice trembling ever so slightly. "But I love you, Paula. I want to build a life with you, a fresh start, on honest terms." Tears pricked her eyes, a rush of warmth flooding her chest. "Dennis," she exhaled shakily, smiling. "Yes, I'd love that. I love you too." They embraced under the cedar's branches, snowflakes drifting down as if blessing their moment. Their shared tragedies had led them to an unlikely happiness neither had dared imagine when their worlds first collided. Epilogue-style scene. Weeks later, a small, intimate ceremony unfolded in Paula's new backyard. Only close friends and family attended: Paul, Colin, Mark, Haley, Ethan, Lily, and a handful of others who supported them. No extravagant decorations, just soft music, a few flowers, and an open atmosphere brimming with genuine affection. Paula wore a simple ivory dress. Dennis donned a neat suit, eyes bright with an emotion that was a far cry from the heartbreak of months prior. As they exchanged vows, promises shaped by the weight of past sorrow, they locked eyes, each silently vowing never to repeat the mistakes that once tore their lives apart. A light breeze stirred, carrying away the last vestiges of the old heartbreak. In its place was a promise. From ruin could come renewal, from betrayal could grow a deeper sincerity. After warm congratulations and laughter over slices of homemade cake, the newly united family, Dennis, Paula, and their children, gathered for a photo under the bare-limbed oak tree. The camera caught them in mid-laugh, a snapshot of resilience and second chances. That evening, as they all parted, the final reflection was clear. Even after the most bitter endings, new beginnings can flourish. For Dennis and Paula, that was enough. The future stretched out before them, bright with the simple joy of waking up each day by one another's side.